What if I told you that 2 billion years ago, Earth experienced something so impossible, so mind-bending, that it literally changed the color of our planet forever? And NASA's deep core drilling projects have been quietly uncovering evidence that challenges everything we thought we knew about life itself. Picture this. You're floating high above Earth, but it's not the blue marble, you know. The oceans below shimmer in shades of rust and amber. The sky glows with an alien purple hue, and the continents, well, they're barely recognizable as land at all. This isn't science fiction. This is the hidden story of our planet's most mysterious era, a time so foreign that if you could travel back, you'd need a spacesuit just to breathe. In the next 2 hours, as your mind drifts towards sleep, we'll journey together through the most incredible transformation in Earth's history. You'll discover how tiny organisms smaller than the period at the end of this sentence literally saved our planet, why the sky wasn't blue for billions of years, and the shocking truth about what NASA found buried 2 miles beneath your feet. Scientists kept these discoveries quiet for decades, but recently declassified research reveals something extraordinary. The Earth you think you know is actually the result of the greatest environmental catastrophe our planet ever survived. And the heroes of this story? They're so small, you'd need a microscope to see them. Before we begin this peaceful journey back through time, take a moment to like this video if you're ready to discover something amazing. Subscribe for more cosmic bedtime stories. And comment below with your country and what time you're listening. I love knowing how far our nighttime explorations reach across the globe. Now, let your breathing slow, let your body sink deeper into comfort, and prepare to witness the most beautiful and terrifying chapter in Earth's ancient diary. Imagine you're standing at the edge of an ancient ocean, but the waves lapping at your feet aren't the familiar blue-green, you know. They're the color of rust, thick with iron, that makes the water look like liquid metal under an alien sky. The air shimmers with an otherworldly quality, and as you look up, you realize something profound. There's no blue above you. The sky glows in shades of orange and purple, like a permanent sunset that never ends. This is Earth, 2 billion years ago. This is the world that existed for longer than complex life has walked our planet. And what happened here would determine whether you would ever exist at all. The mystery begins with a simple question that haunted scientists for decades. Why do we find these strange, layered rock formations all over the world? In Australia, Canada, Russia, and South Africa, geologists discovered identical patterns, thin bands of red and black stone stacked like pages in an ancient book. For years, no one could explain them. Then, in 1973, a young geologist named Preston Cloud made a discovery that changed everything. These weren't just rocks, they were tombstones, monuments to the greatest mass extinction event our planet had ever known. But here's the twist that kept Cloud awake at night. The extinction wasn't caused by asteroids or volcanoes or climate change. It was caused by life itself. The Earth as it truly was then. The continents were smaller, scattered across the globe like islands in a vast metallic sea. There were no trees, no grass, no flowers. The land was bare rock, sculpted only by wind and water. But beneath the waves, something extraordinary was happening. In the depths of those rust-colored oceans, microscopic beings were quietly performing what we now call the most important chemical reaction in Earth's history. They were eating sunlight and breathing out poison. At least, what seemed like poison to every other living thing on the planet. This poison was oxygen. For 2 billion years. That's twice as long as complex animals have existed. Our planet was ruled by creatures that lived without breathing. They thrived in a world without oxygen, in an atmosphere thick with methane and hydrogen sulfide. The early Earth was more like Saturn's moon Titan than the world we know today. But then came the cyanobacteria. These tiny blue-green organisms discovered something revolutionary. They could harness the power of sunlight to split water molecules. keeping the hydrogen and releasing the oxygen as waste. It seems harmless enough, doesn't it? Just microscopic. Plants doing what plants do, except oxygen was deadly. It was reactive, corrosive, toxic to nearly every form of life that existed. And these little organisms were pumping billions of tons of it into the atmosphere every single day. The question that will guide us through our journey tonight is this: how did life survive its own success? How did our planet transform from a poisonous, alien world into the blue oasis we call home? And what can those banded iron formations tell us about the greatest rescue mission in Earth's history? As we prepare to explore these mysteries, let your mind drift like sediment settling in an ancient sea. The answers await us in the next chapter, where we'll witness the moment everything changed. Picture yourself floating in a time machine, drifting back through the millennia until you reach that pivotal moment 2.4 billion years ago when everything changed. The oceans stretch endlessly before you, their rusty waters reflecting a sky painted in shades of amber and violet. There's no land, as you know. It's just scattered volcanic islands emerging from the metallic seas like the backs of sleeping giants. And in these waters, something remarkable is happening that will reshape our entire planet. Beneath the surface, colonies of cyanobacteria form living mats that undulate gently with the tides. These aren't the green plants you might imagine. They're more like alien carpets, purple and red and orange, covering the seafloor in patterns so intricate they look like abstract art. Each tiny organism is a chemical factory, powered by the sun's rays penetrating the murky water. They're performing photosynthesis, but it's a primitive version of what plants do today. They're learning, evolving, experimenting with this new way of capturing energy from light. And with each passing day, each breath of sunlight they consume, they release more oxygen into the water. At first, this oxygen doesn't accumulate. The ancient oceans are filled with iron, and oxygen loves iron the way rust loves metal. Every molecule of oxygen immediately combines with iron, creating those distinctive red bands we find in rocks today. The ocean is essentially rusting from the inside out, turning the water into a liquid that would look more at home on Mars than Earth. This process continues for hundreds of millions of years longer than complex animals have existed on our planet. The cyanobacteria keep producing oxygen, and the ocean keeps soaking it up like an enormous chemical sponge. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Gradually, inexorably, the ocean runs out of iron to rust. Every molecule of iron has been oxidized, turned into those red bands that will become the iron ore deposits future humans will mine. The ocean has become saturated, like a solution that can't dissolve any more salt. And the cyanobacteria, oblivious to the catastrophe they're creating, keep producing oxygen at an accelerating rate. Suddenly, for the first time in Earth's history, oxygen begins to accumulate in the atmosphere. It rises from the oceans like invisible smoke, transforming the very air itself. This is the moment scientists call the Great Oxidation Event. But for most life on Earth, it might as well have been called the Great Dying. Oxygen is a powerful chemical, so reactive that it can break apart the delicate molecules that primitive life depends on. It's like introducing fire into a world made of paper. Most of the anaerobic bacteria that had ruled Earth for billions of years simply couldn't survive. The die-off was catastrophic. Entire ecosystems collapsed. The atmosphere itself became toxic to the majority of living things. Methane, which had helped warm the early Earth, was destroyed by the new oxygen, causing global temperatures to plummet. Ice sheets advanced from the poles, covering much of the planet in what scientists call snowball Earth episodes periods, when our planet looked more like a giant snowball than the vibrant world we know today. But here's the incredible part, the part that makes this story so perfect for drifting off to sleep. This catastrophe, this near extinction of life itself, was also the greatest gift our planet ever received. Because while oxygen was deadly to anaerobic life, it opened up possibilities that were unimaginable before. Oxygen is incredibly energetic. Organisms that could learn to use oxygen instead of being poisoned by it would have access to 15 times more energy than their anaerobic ancestors did. As we drift deeper into this story, imagine those first brave organisms that began to experiment with oxygen. They were pioneers, exploring a new way of being alive in a world that had become hostile to their ancestors. Some found ways to hide from the oxygen, retreating to deep ocean trenches and underground caverns where they still live. Today, unchanged after 2 billion years. Others began the slow process of adaptation, learning to breathe poison and transform it into power. The stage is set for one of the most remarkable comebacks in Earth's history. Our planet stands at a crossroads. Will it become a frozen wasteland, poisoned by its own atmosphere? Or will life find a way to not just survive, but thrive in this new oxygenated world? The answer waits for us in the next chapter, where we'll witness the rise of the first complex cells and discover why the oxygen catastrophe was actually the best thing that ever happened to life on Earth. In the depths of those ancient, oxygen-rich oceans, something extraordinary was about to happen. Not all organisms fled from the toxic oxygen, or simply died from its corrosive touch. Some began to experiment, to adapt, to transform the very poison that had killed their ancestors into the fuel for an entirely new kind of existence. Picture yourself swimming through these primordial waters, witnessing the birth of complexity itself, as microscopic pioneers took the first tentative breaths of what would become the foundation of all complex life on Earth. Not the heroes of this chapter are organisms so small you could fit millions of them on the head of a pin. Yet their innovation was so profound, it makes the invention of the wheel seem trivial by comparison. These early bacteria discovered something that would change everything. They could use oxygen not just to survive, but to unlock energy in ways that had never been possible before. While their anaerobic cousins could only extract a tiny amount of energy from their food, these new oxygen-breathing organisms, the first aerobic bacteria, could harvest 15 to 20 times more energy from the same resources. It was like discovering that you could run your car not on a single cup of gasoline, but on the energy equivalent of an entire tank. But the real magic was yet to come. In a process that scientists still marvel at today, something unprecedented happened in the history of life. One organism engulfed another, but instead of digesting it, they began to live together in harmony. The larger cell provided protection and resources, while the smaller oxygen-breathing bacterium became a living power plant, generating energy for both of them. This wasn't just cooperation, it was the birth of the eukaryotic cell, the foundation of all complex life, including you and me. These merged organisms, called endosymbionts, were revolutionary. The oxygen-breathing bacteria became what we now call mitochondria, the powerhouses of every cell in your body. Right now, as you breathe and your heart beats and your mind processes these words, billions of these ancient bacterial descendants are working inside your cells, using oxygen to create the energy that keeps you alive. You are, in a very real sense, a walking colony of cooperation between organisms that first learned to work together in those rust-colored seas. 2 billion years ago, the transformation didn't happen overnight. It took hundreds of millions of years for these new complex cells to perfect their partnership and begin experimenting with new forms of organization. Some learned to move with whip-like tails, exploring their watery world with newfound mobility. Others developed the ability to sense light and chemical gradients, becoming the first organisms to truly navigate their environment. Still, others began to specialize, with some cells focusing on gathering food, while others concentrated on reproduction. As oxygen levels continued to rise, the planet itself began to transform. The purple and orange skies slowly gave way to blue, as oxygen interacted with sunlight in new ways. The rust-colored oceans began to clear as the last of the iron was oxidized and settled to the seafloor. For the first time in Earth's history, sunlight could penetrate deep into the water, illuminating vast underwater landscapes that had been shrouded in metallic haze for eons. Imagine the beauty of this transformation, a world emerging from its cocoon, becoming something entirely new. The most remarkable part of this story is how these early complex cells began to experiment with something that seems almost magical: multicellularity. Individual cells started clustering together, sharing resources and information in ways that allowed them to become more than the sum of their parts. Some clusters learned to form protective barriers around themselves. Others developed specialized cells for different functions, some for gathering food, some for reproduction, some for sensing the environment. These weren't just random aggregations of cells. They were the first steps toward true multicellular organisms, the ancestors of every plant, animal, and fungus that would ever exist. In the quiet depths of those ancient oceans, life was learning the fundamental lesson of cooperation that would eventually lead to forests and coral reefs and the human brain capable of pondering its own existence. The oxygen that had once been a deadly poison was now becoming the breath of life itself. The atmosphere that had caused mass extinction was now enabling levels of complexity and energy that would have been impossible in the old anaerobic world. Earth was learning to breathe, and with each breath, it was becoming more beautiful, more diverse, more alive. The stage is now set for an even more dramatic transformation. These new complex cells, powered by oxygen and organized into cooperative communities, are about to embark on experiments in form and function that will ultimately fill the oceans with the first true multicellular organisms. But first, they must survive another challenge, one that will test whether life's new partnership with oxygen is strong enough to survive the planet's most extreme climate changes. In our next chapter, we'll explore how these cellular pioneers weathered ice ages that nearly turned Earth into a frozen wasteland, and discover why their survival led to the most spectacular explosion of diversity our planet had ever seen. Imagine Earth as a giant snowball spinning through space, its surface covered in ice from pole to pole, its oceans frozen solid, except for thin layers of liquid water trapped beneath miles of ice. This isn't a scene from science fiction or a distant planet in another solar system. This was our Earth, roughly 650 million years ago, locked in the grip of the most severe ice age our planet has ever experienced. The story of how life not only survived, but thrived during these frozen epochs is one of the most remarkable tales of persistence and adaptation in the history of our planet. And it's happening right here in the comfort of your own bed as your body temperature naturally begins to drop toward the restful state of sleep. The snowball Earth episodes, as scientists call them, occurred multiple times during the late Proterozoic era, each lasting millions of years. Picture yourself as one of those tiny complex cells we met in the previous chapter, now faced with a world transformed into an alien ice planet. The surface temperature dropped to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, even at the equator. The familiar, rust-colored oceans were hidden beneath ice sheets, sometimes more than a mile thick. Sunlight, the precious energy source that had powered the cyanobacteria for billions of years, could barely penetrate through the frozen surface to reach the liquid water below. Yet life found a way. In the thin layers of unfrozen water that persisted, beneath the ice, in underwater volcanic vents that provided pockets of warmth, and in the deep ocean basins that remained liquid despite the surface freeze, microscopic organisms continued their patient work of evolution. These weren't just survivors clinging to existence, they were innovators, using the extreme conditions as an opportunity to experiment with new ways of being alive. During these frozen epochs, something beautiful happened in the hidden depths of the ice-covered oceans. The complex cells we've been following in our story began to organize themselves in entirely new ways. With limited resources and extreme conditions forcing innovation, they started experimenting with more sophisticated forms of cooperation. Some learned to form elaborate colonies where different cells took on specialized roles, some becoming experts at gathering the scarce nutrients, others focusing on reproduction, still others serving as scouts to explore new territories beneath. The ice. These ice ages also served as a kind of evolutionary pressure cooker. Only the most adaptable, most cooperative, and most efficient organisms could survive in a world where energy was scarce and conditions were harsh. The weak partnerships between cells were broken, while the strong symbiotic relationships like the one between cells and their mitochondrial power plants became even more refined and efficient. It was during these frozen epochs that the fundamental patterns of cellular cooperation that would eventually lead to plants and animals were perfected. Chemistry of the frozen oceans also played a crucial role in preparing Earth for what was to come. With the surface waters locked away as ice, the deep oceans became concentrated with minerals and nutrients. Ocean currents, though sluggish, continued to circulate beneath the ice, slowly mixing these nutrient-rich waters and creating chemical gradients that life could exploit. When the ice finally began to melt, these concentrated nutrients would be released back into the ocean system, creating conditions ripe for an explosion of evolutionary innovation. The melting of Snowball Earth was as dramatic as its formation. Volcanic activity continued throughout the ice ages, pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This greenhouse gas gradually built up over millions of years until it reached a tipping point. When the warming finally began, it happened rapidly. In geological terms, the ice began to retreat, first at the equator, then gradually toward the poles. As more dark ocean water was exposed, it absorbed more sunlight than the reflective ice had, accelerating the warming process. What emerged from this global thaw was a planet ready for transformation. The oceans, enriched with nutrients and minerals, accumulated during the ice ages, provided perfect conditions for life to diversify and expand. The complex cells that had survived the freeze were like compressed springs, ready to explode into new forms and functions as soon as conditions allowed. This is where our story takes on the quality of a beautiful dream. The organisms that had learned cooperation and specialization during the harsh ice ages were now free to experiment in an ocean filled with opportunity. They began forming the first true multicellular organisms, not just clusters of identical cells, but organized communities where different cells had different jobs and worked together like the organs in a body. Some of these early multicellular organisms learned to build protective shells around themselves, becoming the first animals with hard parts. Others experimented with different body shapes, some flat like pancakes, to maximize their surface area for gathering nutrients. Others elongated like ribbons to move more efficiently through the water. Still others developed the first primitive sensory systems, clusters of cells that could detect light, chemical gradients, or physical touch. The most remarkable thing about this post-Ice Age period is how rapidly diversity exploded. Within a relatively short geological time span, the oceans went from being dominated by microscopic single-celled organisms to hosting a carnival of multicellular life forms in shapes and sizes that would seem fantastical even today. These weren't yet the complex animals with eyes and brains and sophisticated behaviors that would come later, but they were the foundation upon which all future complexity would be built. As we prepare to explore these early multicellular pioneers in our next chapter, take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey we've witnessed so far. From a world poisoned by oxygen to one powered by it, from a planet locked in ice to one blooming with new forms of life. Earth has shown us that even the greatest catastrophes can become opportunities for transformation and growth. Let this thought warm you as we drift toward our next destination in time. where we'll meet some of the strangest and most wonderful creatures that ever lived in the soft twilight between the ancient microbial world and the explosion of complex life that would follow. There existed a time of profound tranquility and strange beauty. Welcome to the Ediacaran period, named after the Ediacara Hills in Australia, where some of the most mysterious fossils on Earth were first discovered. This was life's garden period, a time when the oceans hosted creatures so unusual, so unlike anything that exists today, that scientists spent decades debating whether they were animals, plants, or something else entirely. As you settle more comfortably into your resting place, let yourself float back to this gentle era when Earth's first large, complex organisms drifted through seas as warm and nurturing as a perfect bath. Picture yourself swimming through these ancient waters, and you would encounter sights that seem more like an alien art gallery than a natural ecosystem. Floating before you like living quilts are creatures called Dickinsonia oval-shaped organisms that could grow several feet long. Their bodies marked with intricate ribbed patterns that look almost like fingerprints from some cosmic hand. These weren't quite animals as we understand them today, but they weren't plants either. They were something wonderfully in between, absorbing nutrients directly from the bacterial mats that covered the seafloor like living carpets. Nearby, anchored to the bottom like underwater trees, stood the Charnia tall, frond-like organisms that swayed gently with the currents. Some scientists believe they were early animals. Others think they might have been giant colonial organisms, communities of cells working together in ways we can barely imagine. Their fractal patterns branch and divide like ferns, or like the branching patterns you see in your own blood vessels and lungs. Nature's way of maximizing surface area and creating beauty through mathematical precision. The Ediacaran world was a place of remarkable serenity. There were no predators as we know them today, no teeth, no claws, no chase scenes in the ancient seas. Life existed in a kind of Eden, where organisms focused entirely on growth, reproduction, and the gentle art of extracting energy from their environment. The largest creatures, some growing to several feet in length, moved slowly, if at all, living lives of meditative stillness that lasted for decades or even centuries. Many of these organisms seemed to have fed through their skin, absorbing dissolved organic compounds directly from the water around them, much like how you might absorb the warmth of a hot bath through your skin. Others formed partnerships with bacteria, hosting microscopic symbionts that could photosynthesize or process chemicals to provide food for their larger hosts. It was a world built on cooperation rather than competition, partnership rather than predation. The seafloor itself was unlike anything we see today. Instead of the sandy or rocky bottoms of modern oceans, the Ediacaran seafloor was covered in thick spongy mats made of cyanobacteria and other microorganisms. These microbial mats were like living carpets, providing food, shelter, and stability for the larger organisms that lived on or in them. Walking on the Ediacaran seafloor would have felt like walking on a waterbed covered in velvet soft, yielding and alive. Some of the most intriguing Ediacaran organisms were the rangimorphs creatures that grew in branching, tree-like patterns, but were made entirely of soft tissue. They fed by filtering nutrients from the water, their complex branching structures creating maximum surface area for absorption. These organisms grew in gardens, sometimes covering acres of seafloor with their geometric beauty. When paleontologists first discovered their fossils, they looked so much like abstract art that some scientists initially thought they might be inorganic structures rather than living creatures. The mystery of what these organisms actually were has captivated scientists for generations. Some, like the famous Sprigina, with its segmented body and possible head shield, seem to hint at the arthropods that would dominate later seas. Others, like the disc-shaped Ediacaria, might be related to jellyfish or other cnidarians. but many seem to represent entirely extinct experiments in multicellular organization evolutionary paths that were tried once and never repeated. Recent research has revealed that many ediacaran organisms were actually quite sophisticated in ways that aren't immediately obvious from their simple appearances. Some had complex internal hydraulic systems that allowed them to move and change shape. Others had intricate patterns of cell organization that suggest they were developing early forms of tissue differentiation. They were pioneers, testing out the fundamental principles of being large, complex, and multicellular. Perhaps most remarkably, the Ediacaran period shows us that evolution doesn't always follow the path we might expect. These organisms lived successfully for tens of millions of years without developing the hard shells, sharp teeth, or complex behaviors that would characterize later life. They found their own ways to thrive through beauty, through cooperation, through the gentle art of extracting life from sunlight and seawater. The end of the Ediacaran period came not with a catastrophic extinction, but with a gradual transformation. As ocean chemistry changed and new forms of life evolved, many of these gentle giants simply faded away, leaving behind only their ghostly impressions in ancient rocks. They were replaced by faster, more aggressive organisms that could burrow, swim, and eventually hunt. The age of innocence was ending, and the age of complexity was about to begin. But their legacy lives on in more ways than we might realize. The fundamental principles of multicellular organization, that they pioneered how cells communicate with each other, how tissues form and function, how organisms maintain their shape and structure. These are still the foundations of every complex organism on Earth today, including you. As we prepare to witness the next great transformation in Earth's history, let yourself rest in the peaceful memory of the Ediacaran Gardens, where life learned to be beautiful before it learned to be complex. From the gentle, dreamy world of Ediacaran Gardens, we now drift forward through time to witness what paleontologists call the most spectacular fireworks show in the history of life on Earth. The Cambrian explosion, beginning around 540 million years ago, was a period when evolution seemed to accelerate into overdrive, experimenting with body plans and survival strategies so rapidly and so creatively that it compressed what might normally take hundreds of millions of years into just 20 million years of fevered innovation. Imagine watching billions of years of slow, steady evolution suddenly burst into a carnival of impossible creatures, each more fantastical than the last. And you'll begin to understand the wonder that paleontologists feel when they study the rocks from this extraordinary time. Picture yourself floating through the warm, shallow seas of the early Cambrian period, and you would witness something like a living dream. The peaceful Ediacaran meadows have been transformed into bustling underwater cities where creatures with 5 eyes hunt creatures with protective spines, where organisms build elaborate shells shaped like ice cream cones, and where the first primitive brains begin to contemplate their watery world. This isn't just evolution. This is evolution on fast forward, as if life itself had discovered the secret of unlimited creativity and decided to use it all at once. The star of our show is a creature called Anomalocaris, whose name means abnormal, shrimp, though it was neither abnormal nor a shrimp, but rather the ocean's first large predator, growing up to 6 feet long, enormous by the standards of the time. Anomalocaris cruised through the water with undulating fins that ran along its sides like graceful ribbons. Its head bore 2 flexible arms that it used to grasp prey, and its circular mouth, ringed with teeth, could expand and contract like a camera aperture. To the smaller creatures of the Cambrian seas, Anomalocaris must have seemed like a gentle sea monster, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. But Anomalocaris was just one player in a cast of thousands. The Cambrian seas were filled with trilobites arthropods that would become some of the most successful animals in Earth's history, surviving for nearly 300 million years. These weren't the simple, uniform creatures you might expect from early animals. They developed compound eyes with thousands of lenses, some species creating visual systems so sophisticated they could detect polarized light and see clearly both above and below water simultaneously. Some trilobites grew elaborate spines and horns. Others developed the ability to roll into protective balls like ancient pill bugs. And still others became filter feeders that sifted nutrients from the water with feathery appendages. The diversity of Cambrian life forms challenges our imagination even today. There was hallucigenia, a creature so bizarre that scientists initially couldn't tell which end was its head and which was its tail. It walked on 7 pairs of defensive spines, while 7 tentacle-like appendages along its back either captured food or served some other mysterious purpose. Wiwaxia looked like a living pincushion, covered in scales and spines, while Pikaia, possibly one of our own very ancient ancestors, was among the first creatures to develop a primitive backbone. Perhaps most remarkable of all was Opabinia, a creature that seems to have been assembled from the spare parts of a dozen different animals. It had 5 mushroom-shaped eyes along the top of its head, a long flexible proboscis ending in a grasping claw that it used to capture prey, and a segmented body with fins along the sides. When paleontologists first reconstructed Opabinia from its fossils, it looked so impossible that some wondered if the fossils had been assembled incorrectly. But further discoveries confirmed that evolution during the Cambrian was indeed this creative, this willing to experiment with forms that would seem like fantasy creatures if we encountered them today. What caused this sudden explosion of creativity? Scientists have identified several factors that combine to create perfect conditions for evolutionary experimentation. First, the chemistry of the oceans had finally stabilized after the tumultuous ice ages, with oxygen levels reaching a point where complex, active life could thrive. Second, the evolution of predation created an arms race. Once some animals learned to hunt others, prey species had to evolve new defenses, which drove predators to develop better hunting strategies, which drove prey to evolve even more sophisticated defenses, and so on in an escalating cycle of innovation. But perhaps most importantly, this was when life discovered the toolkit of developmental biology, the genetic switches and chemical signals that allow a single fertilized egg to develop into a complex organism with eyes, limbs, digestive systems, and nervous systems all in the right places. Once evolution figured out how to build complex bodies, it began experimenting with every possible variation on the theme. Like a master architect who had just discovered new building materials and construction techniques. The Cambrian period also saw the evolution of the first true ecosystems as we would recognize them today. Instead of the simple layered communities of earlier eras, Cambrian seas hosted complex food webs where nutrients and energy flowed through multiple levels of interaction. Bacteria and algae still formed the foundation of life, but now they supported not just passive filter feeders, but active hunters and sophisticated prey species, creating the dynamic ecological relationships that still characterize life today. Of the Cambrian experiments in body design would prove to be evolutionary dead ends. Anomalocaris and its relatives vanished without direct descendants. The bizarre Wiwaxids and their spiny armor gave way to other defensive strategies. Even the trilobites, successful as they were, would eventually succumb to later mass extinctions. But the fundamental innovations of the Cambrian eyes, brains, shells, sophisticated sensory systems, complex behaviors became the foundation upon which all later animal life would be built. The Cambrian explosion reminds us that life's history is not just about gradual, steady progress, but also about moments of incredible creativity and rapid change. In just 20 million years, a blink of an eye in geological terms, life invented most of the basic body plans that still exist today. It was during this time that nature learned to see, to think, to move with purpose and precision. The Cambrian seas were like a vast laboratory where evolution tested every idea it could imagine. And while many of those experiments would prove unsuccessful, the ones that worked would change the world forever. In the quieter waters following. The explosive creativity of the Cambrian period, a small, seemingly unremarkable creature was swimming through the ancient seas, its simple body propelled by gentle undulations of a primitive fin. This creature, no longer than your finger, possessed something that would prove more revolutionary than the elaborate spines of hallucigenia or the compound eyes of the trilobites. Running along its back was a flexible rod of cartilage, the first. Backbone. This humble innovation would give rise to every vertebrate that has ever lived, from the tiniest fish to the largest dinosaurs to you, resting peacefully as you listen to the story of your own incredibly ancient heritage. Picea, as scientists have named this early vertebrate, looked almost like a tiny swimming pickle with fins. It had no eyes to speak of, no jaws, no sophisticated sensory organs, just a simple, elongated body with that crucial internal support structure that would become the vertebrate spine. Swimming through the Cambrian seas alongside creatures that seemed far more advanced and successful, Picea might have appeared to be evolution's afterthought, a simple creature in a world of growing complexity. Yet within that unassuming body lay the blueprint for a revolution in animal design that was only just beginning. The evolution of the backbone was more than just a structural innovation. It was the key that unlocked an entirely new way of being an animal. While invertebrates had to rely on external shells or internal water pressure to maintain their shape, vertebrates could use their flexible internal skeleton to create bodies that were both strong and incredibly maneuverable. The backbone became like a biological I-beam, providing the structural support needed for larger, more complex bodies while maintaining the flexibility that allows fish to dart through water and birds to soar through air. Following Picea through the fossil record, we encounter increasingly sophisticated vertebrates, each generation building upon the innovations of the last. The conodonts appeared next, tiny, eel-like creatures with the first mineralized parts of what would become teeth. These weren't teeth as we know them today, but rather small, sharp structures in their throats used for processing food. What makes conodonts particularly fascinating is that they were among the first animals to develop complex feeding behaviors, actively hunting prey rather than simply filter feeding or grazing on bacterial mats. As we drift forward through time, the vertebrate body plan continues to evolve and elaborate. The first true fish appeared with paired fins that gave them unprecedented control over their movement through the water. These early fish developed lateral line systems, sophisticated networks of sensory cells that could detect the slightest water movements, allowing them to sense approaching predators or prey even in murky water. It was like being able to feel, at a distance, a sixth sense that gave vertebrates a tremendous advantage in the underwater world. But perhaps the most revolutionary development was the evolution of jaws. The first vertebrates, like Picea, were jawless filter feeders, essentially living straws that sucked in whatever nutrients they could find in the water. The development of jaws transformed vertebrates from passive consumers into active predators, capable of biting, chewing, and processing food in entirely new ways. These first-jawed fish, called placoderms, became the apex predators of their time, with some species growing to enormous sizes and developing armor plating that made them look like swimming tanks. The placoderms experimented with jaw design in ways that seem almost playful in their variety. Some developed sharp, cutting teeth for slicing through prey. Others created flat, grinding plates for crushing shells and hard-bodied invertebrates. Dunkleosteus, one of the largest placoderms, grew to 30 feet in length and had jaws so powerful they could bite through almost any armor that existed at the time. Instead of teeth, it had sharp, bony plates that functioned like enormous scissors, capable of cutting prey in half with a single bite. The success of these early vertebrates began to reshape entire ecosystems. For the first time, large, active predators were moving through the water columns of ancient seas, creating new selective pressures that drove the evolution of faster, more maneuverable prey species. The arms race between predator and prey that had begun in the Cambrian was now escalating, with vertebrates bringing new capabilities to both sides of the equation. As vertebrates continued to diversify, some began to explore new ecological niches. Early sharks appeared, their cartilaginous skeletons making them lighter and more maneuverable than their bony plated relatives. These primitive sharks were smaller and less specialized than modern species, but they introduced hunting strategies based on stealth and speed rather than brute force. Their flexible bodies and efficient swimming styles would prove so successful that sharks have remained virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. Other vertebrates began to explore the boundaries between water and land. Some developed primitive lungs alongside their gills, allowing them to extract oxygen from air when water levels dropped during dry seasons. Others began to use their fins not just for swimming, but for pushing themselves along the bottom of shallow ponds and streams, presaging the evolution of limbs that would eventually carry vertebrates onto dry land. The internal skeleton that began as a simple rod and paikia was proving to be infinitely adaptable. Unlike external shells or exoskeletons, which had to be shed and regrown to allow for growth, the vertebrate skeleton could grow continuously throughout an animal's life. This allowed vertebrates to reach much larger sizes than their invertebrate cousins, and the internal placement of the skeleton left the outside of the body free for specialized skin, scales, feathers, or fur. Perhaps most importantly, the vertebrate body plan provided the perfect foundation for the evolution of complex brains and sophisticated sensory systems. The concentration of nerve tissue at the head end of the body, protected by a bony skull, would eventually give rise to the most complex information processing systems ever evolved. In these early vertebrates, we can see the first stirrings of what would eventually become consciousness itself. As we prepare to follow some of these ancient swimmers onto land, let yourself rest in the knowledge that their journey is also your journey, their innovations living on in every heartbeat, every breath, every thought. The rise of the vertebrates represents one of evolution's most successful experiments in animal design. From humble beginnings as simple swimmers in Cambrian seas, vertebrates would eventually colonize every environment on Earth, the deepest ocean trenches, the highest mountain peaks, and every habitat in between. But their greatest adventure still lay ahead, the conquest of dry land, where they would face challenges that would test every innovation they had developed in the safety of their aquatic cradle. Imagine standing on the shore of an ancient lake 400 million years ago, watching as something extraordinary unfolds in the shallow water near your feet. The surface breaks as a strange creature emerges, part fish, part something else entirely. Its body is supported by 4 stubby limbs rather than fins, and as you watch and wonder, it takes its first tentative steps onto the muddy shore. This is Acanthostega, one of the first vertebrates to venture out of the water that had been life's home for billions of years. With each labored breath through primitive lungs, with each awkward step on legs, still better suited for swimming than walking, this ancient pioneer is beginning the greatest journey in vertebrate history, the colonization of land. The transition from water to land was not a single dramatic leap, but rather a gradual process spanning millions of years, driven by both opportunity and necessity. During the late Devonian period, Earth's climate was undergoing significant changes, with periods of drought causing shallow seas and lakes to shrink and sometimes disappear entirely. Fish trapped in these drying pools faced a stark choice: develop the ability to survive out of water or perish when their aquatic homes vanished. Some chose a third option. They began to walk. The challenges facing these early land pioneers were immense. Water had provided support for their bodies, protection from temperature fluctuations, and a medium through which they could breathe. On land, they had to support their own weight against gravity, regulate their body temperature in an environment that could be scorching hot during the day and freezing cold at night, and extract oxygen directly from the air. Most fundamentally, they had to learn to move in an entirely new way, using limbs to propel themselves across surfaces rather than through fluids. The first tentative steps onto land were taken by fish that had already begun adapting to shallow water environments. These early pioneers, like Tiktaalik, had developed several crucial innovations that would serve them well on dry land. They had primitive lungs that allowed them to breathe air when dissolved oxygen levels in water became too low. Their fins had evolved into something resembling primitive limbs, with bone structures that could support weight and provide leverage for movement. Most importantly, they had developed necks, the ability to move their heads independently of bodies, which gave them the flexibility to look around for food and danger in their new terrestrial environment. Tiktaalik, whose name means large. Freshwater fish in the Inuktitut language represents a perfect intermediate between fish and the first amphibians. It retained many fish-like characteristic scales, fins, and gills, but also possessed the shoulder bones, elbow joints, and wrist, bones that would become essential for terrestrial locomotion. Its skull was flattened, more like a crocodile than a fish, with eyes positioned on top of its head, so it could see above the water's surface while the rest of its body remained submerged. The early terrestrial environment that greeted these pioneers was unlike anything that exists today. There were no grasses, no flowers, no trees as we know them. The land was dominated by primitive plants, mosses, ferns, and early trees that looked more like giant ferns than modern forests. These early forests were eerily quiet, with no bird songs, no insect buzzes, no mammalian calls, just the rustle of wind through ancient foliage and the occasional splash of an amphibian returning to water to breed. The amphibians that evolved from these first terrestrial explorers faced the constant challenge of balancing life between two worlds. They developed increasingly sophisticated lungs for breathing air, but retained their ability to absorb oxygen through their skin when in water. Their limbs became stronger and more articulated, allowing them to move efficiently on land, but they remained tied to aquatic environments for reproduction. Their eggs, lacking the protective shells that would evolve later, could only survive in water. Some of these early amphibians grew to impressive sizes. Prionosuchus, a crocodile-like amphibian from the Permian period, reached lengths of up to 30 feet, making it one of the largest amphibians that ever lived. It spent most of its time in water, but could venture onto land to hunt or escape predators. Other species, like Diplodocus, with its distinctive boomerang-shaped skull, developed specialized adaptations for life in specific environments. In Diplodocus's case, the wide skull may have provided stability and maneuverability in fast-flowing streams. The colonization of land opened up entirely new ecological possibilities. Terrestrial environments offered abundant space, diverse microhabitats, and freedom from the intense predation pressure that characterized aquatic ecosystems. Early amphibians found themselves in a world where they were often the largest and most sophisticated predators, feeding on the primitive arthropods and other invertebrates that had colonized land before them. But perhaps most importantly, life on land accelerated the evolution of complex behaviors and sensory systems. In water, many fish rely heavily on their lateral line systems to detect movement and navigate. On land, vision and hearing became much more important. Early terrestrial vertebrates developed increasingly sophisticated eyes, adapted for seeing in air rather than water, and primitive ears that could detect airborne vibrations. These sensory adaptations would lay the foundation for the complex behaviors that would, characterize more advanced terrestrial vertebrates. The transition to terrestrial life also drove innovations in locomotion that would have profound implications for all future vertebrate evolution. The development of distinct limbs with joints, shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, ankles created. A modular system that could be adapted for running, climbing, digging, or flying. The basic pentadactyl limb plan 5 digits per hand or foot that evolved in these early amphibians would be inherited by virtually all later terrestrial vertebrates, modified and specialized, but retaining the same fundamental architecture in the wing of a bat, the flipper of a whale, and your own hands and feet. As these early amphibians diversified and spread across the available terrestrial habitats, they began to face new challenges. The climate was becoming increasingly arid in many regions, making it difficult for creatures that still needed to return to water to reproduce. Some lineages responded by developing more efficient kidneys that could conserve water. Others began to modify their reproductive strategies, seeking ways to free themselves from dependence on aquatic environments for breeding. The stage was being set for the next great innovation in vertebrate evolution, the amniotic egg. This remarkable structure would finally allow vertebrates to complete their transition to terrestrial life by providing a portable aquatic environment for developing embryos. But that transformation would require even more dramatic changes in anatomy, physiology, and behavior changes that would give rise to the reptiles, and eventually to dinosaurs, birds, and mammals. As we prepare to witness this next great leap in vertebrate evolution, let yourself rest in the knowledge that every step of this incredible journey lives on in your own body. In the warm, humid forests of 300 million years ago, something remarkable was happening beneath the canopy of giant ferns and early conifers. A small, lizard-like creature was carefully burying a clutch of eggs in the soft, moist earth near the base of a massive tree fern. These weren't the soft, jelly-like eggs of amphibians that had to be laid in water, but something revolutionary: eggs enclosed in tough, leathery shells that contained everything a developing embryo needed to survive on dry land. This simple innovation, the amniotic egg, would free vertebrates from their dependence on aquatic environments and open up the vast terrestrial world for conquest. As you settle more deeply into rest, let your mind drift back to this pivotal moment when life truly came ashore to stay. The amniotic egg was like a portable ocean, containing specialized membranes that could manage waste, regulate gas exchange, and provide protection while still allowing the embryo to develop in an aquatic environment. The amnion itself creates a fluid-filled cavity around the developing embryo, essentially recreating the conditions of the ancient seas within the confines of an eggshell. The allantois manages waste products and facilitates breathing by bringing blood vessels close to the shell surface, where oxygen and carbon dioxide can be exchanged. The chorion helps regulate the movement of materials in and out of the egg. Together, these membranes created a life support system so effective that it remains virtually unchanged in reptiles and birds today. This innovation allowed the first reptiles to spread into environments that had been inaccessible to their amphibian ancestors. They could venture into arid regions, climb to higher elevations, and explore terrestrial habitats far from any body of water. The early reptiles were small, often no larger than modern lizards, but they possessed something that would prove more valuable than size: complete independence from aquatic environments for reproduction. As reptiles diversified, they began experimenting with body plans and ecological strategies that would define terrestrial vertebrate life for the next 200 million years. Some, like the pelycosaurs, developed large sail-like structures on their backs that may have helped them regulate body temperature by absorbing or dissipating heat. Dimetrodon, with its distinctive back sail, was actually more closely related to mammals than to dinosaurs, representing an early branch of the synapsid lineage that would eventually give rise to all mammalian life. The early reptilian world was one of gentle giants and patient hunters. These weren't the massive, aggressive dinosaurs that would dominate later eras, but rather more modest creatures that moved through their world with a deliberate, almost meditative pace. Many were herbivores, feeding on the increasingly diverse plant life that was transforming the terrestrial landscape. Others became specialized insectivores, developing long tongues and acute eyesight to capture the arthropods that shared their forest homes. The forests themselves were becoming more complex and beautiful with each passing million years. The primitive ferns and club mosses of earlier periods were being joined by the first true conifers, creating multi-layered canopies that filtered sunlight into patterns of light and shadow. In these dappled forests, reptiles learned to bask in warm patches of sunlight to regulate their body temperature, a behavior that connected them intimately with the daily rhythms of their environment. One of the most significant developments during this period was the evolution of increasingly sophisticated respiratory systems. Early amphibians had relied primarily on their skin for gas exchange, which limited their size and activity levels. Reptiles developed more efficient lungs with increasingly complex internal structures that could extract more oxygen from each breath. This respiratory efficiency, combined with improvements in heart structure and circulation, allowed reptiles to maintain higher activity levels and grow to larger sizes than their amphibian predecessors. The skin of reptiles also represented a major innovation in terrestrial adaptation. Unlike the moist, permeable skin of amphibians, reptilian skin was covered with scales that provided protection and helped prevent water loss. These scales weren't just armor, they were sophisticated structures that could be modified for different purposes. Some scales became specialized for display, developing vivid colors and patterns. Others became adapted for specific functions, like the enlarged scales on a snake's belly that provide traction for locomotion. Perhaps most remarkably, reptilian scales would prove to be incredibly versatile evolutionary structures. In some lineages, they would eventually be modified into feathers, enabling flight. In others, they would develop into the hair that characterizes mammals. The basic scale structure that first appeared in early reptiles contains the genetic and developmental toolkit that would be reshaped over millions of years into some of the most beautiful and functional structures in the animal kingdom. As reptiles continued to diversify, different lineages began exploring different solutions to the challenges of terrestrial life. Some remained small and nimble, developing the ability to climb trees and hunt insects with lightning-fast reflexes. Others grew larger and became browsers, developing specialized teeth for processing tough plant material. Still others became aquatic specialists, returning to water but bringing with them all the advantages of reptilian physiology-efficient lungs, waterproof skin, and the ability to lay their eggs on land. The early reptilian period was also a time of remarkable experimentation with locomotion. While most early reptiles retained the sprawling gait of their amphibian ancestors, with legs extending out to the sides of their bodies, some lineages began developing more upright postures. This shift toward erect posture would prove crucial for later reptilian success, as it allowed for more efficient movement and the possibility of much larger body sizes. The world these early reptiles inhabited was remarkably stable and peaceful. Compared to the dramatic environmental changes that had characterized earlier periods in Earth's history, global temperatures were warm and relatively uniform, with no polar ice caps and mild climates extending to high latitudes. This climatic stability provided perfect conditions for reptilian diversification, allowing different lineages to specialize for specific environments and lifestyles without the pressure of rapid environmental change. During this period, we also see the first hints of more complex social behaviors in terrestrial vertebrates. Some early reptiles show evidence of parental care, protecting their nests and possibly even caring for their young after hatching. Others developed elaborate display structures and behaviors, suggesting the beginnings of complex mating rituals. And social hierarchies. The success of early reptiles set the stage for one of the most remarkable periods in Earth's history, the age of dinosaurs. But that spectacular chapter in life's story would emerge from these humble beginnings, from small, careful creatures that learned to live entirely on land and found in that terrestrial world opportunities for growth and diversification that would eventually produce some of the most magnificent creatures ever to walk the earth. In the quiet hours of a Triassic dawn, 230 million years ago, a small, slender creature no larger than a chicken stepped carefully through the undergrowth of a cycad forest. Eoraptor, whose name means dawn thief, moved with a bipedal grace. That was new to the terrestrial world. Its long tail balanced its body as it rose up on its hind legs to peer over a fallen log, its large eyes scanning for the small reptiles and early mammals that made up its diet. This modest hunter, weighing perhaps 20 pounds, carried within its genes the blueprint for what would become the most successful group of large, terrestrial animals in Earth's history. As you sink deeper into tranquil rest, let your mind drift back to witness the humble beginnings of the age of dinosaurs, when giants first learned to walk the earth. The early dinosaurs were not the massive, earth-shaking behemoths of popular imagination, but rather small, agile creatures that seemed almost delicate compared to the heavy-bodied reptiles that had dominated earlier Triassic ecosystems. What made them special wasn't their size, it was their revolutionary approach to locomotion and metabolism. While most other reptiles of their time moved with the sprawling gait inherited from their amphibian ancestors, dinosaurs had evolved an upright posture that positioned their legs directly beneath their bodies. This seemingly simple change had profound implications for their efficiency of movement and their potential for growth. That the upright posture of early dinosaurs allowed them to move with an economy of energy that was unprecedented among large terrestrial animals. Instead of the city-tosside undulation that characterized the movement of their contemporaries, dinosaurs could stride forward with long, efficient steps that carried them across the landscape with surprising grace. This efficiency meant they could travel farther in search of food, escape predators more effectively, and potentially maintain higher activity levels than their sprawling relatives. The world that these early dinosaurs inherited was in the midst of dramatic transformation. The supercontinent Pangaea was beginning to break apart, creating new ocean basins and mountain ranges that would reshape global climate patterns. Volcanic activity was intense, particularly in what would become the Atlantic Ocean basin, pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and creating a greenhouse world with no polar ice and lush vegetation extending to high latitudes. This warm, humid climate provided perfect conditions for reptilian success, and dinosaurs were poised to take full advantage of the opportunities it presented. The plant life of the Triassic was dominated by gymnosperms conifers, cycads, and tree, ferns that created forests unlike anything that exists today. These weren't the flowering plants with their nutritious fruits and seeds that would appear later, but rather tough, resinous plants that required specialized digestive strategies to process. Early dinosaurs showed remarkable innovation in developing new approaches to herbivory, with some lineages evolving longer necks to reach higher vegetation, others developing more complex teeth for processing tough plant material, and still others growing to enormous sizes that allowed them to consume vast quantities of relatively low-quality plant food. Plateosaurus, one of the first truly large dinosaurs, demonstrates this early experimentation with gigantism. Growing up to 30 feet in length and weighing several tons, Plateosaurus could rear up on its hind legs to reach vegetation 15 feet above, the ground higher than any other land animal of its time. Its success as a herbivore was based not on sophisticated teeth or complex digestive systems, but simply on being large enough to process enormous quantities of plant material and extract sufficient nutrition from relatively poor quality food. Sources: the early predatory dinosaurs, while remaining relatively small, were developing hunting strategies and physical capabilities that would set them apart from other carnivorous reptiles of their time. Coelophysis, a slender predator from the late Triassic, moved in packs through the lowland plains, using coordinated hunting strategies to bring down prey much larger than any individual could handle alone. Fossil evidence suggests these early theropods had complex social behaviors, possibly including cooperative hunting, territorial defense, and even primitive forms of parental care. What made these early dinosaurs truly revolutionary wasn't just their physical innovations, but their approach to metabolism and physiology. While most reptiles of the time were ectothermic, relying on external heat sources to regulate their body temperature, dinosaurs show evidence of having developed more sophisticated thermoregulatory capabilities. They may not have been fully warm-blooded in the mammalian sense, but they appear to have maintained more stable body temperatures and higher activity levels than their contemporaries. This physiological sophistication allowed dinosaurs to exploit ecological niches that had been inaccessible to earlier reptiles. They could remain active during cooler periods, venture into higher latitudes and altitudes, and maintain the consistent energy levels needed for complex behaviors like extended parental care and social cooperation. These advantages, combined with their efficient locomotion and innovative feeding strategies, positioned dinosaurs to dominate terrestrial ecosystems for the next 165 million years. Let the vast span of dinosaurian success wash over you like a gentle tide. 165 million years of evolutionary exploration and refinement. The diversity of early dinosaur body plans hints at the spectacular radiation that was to come. Some lineages were already experimenting with armor plating, developing the bony studs and spikes that would characterize the ankylosaurs and stegosaurs of later periods. Others were evolving long necks and small heads, presaging the enormous sauropods that would become the largest land animals ever to exist. Still others retained the bipedal, predatory lifestyle of their ancestors, but began developing the sophisticated sensory systems and hunting adaptations that would culminate in the intelligence and precision of later Theropods. The early Triassic period also saw dinosaurs beginning to experiment with different reproductive strategies. While all dinosaurs laid eggs like their reptilian ancestors, some species began developing increasingly elaborate nesting behaviors, creating structured nests, arranging eggs in careful patterns, and possibly even incubating their clutches with body heat. These behaviors suggest the development of increasingly complex parental care and social organization. Perhaps most remarkably, the early dinosaur period established patterns of ecosystem organization that would persist for hundreds of millions of years. The basic ecological roles of large herbivores, medium-sized omnivores, and specialized predators that dinosaurs developed during the Triassic would be refined and elaborated throughout the Mesozoic era, creating some of the most complex and stable terrestrial ecosystems in Earth's history. The success of early dinosaurs also facilitated the evolution of the first mammals, which appeared during the late Triassic as small, nocturnal creatures that coexisted with dinosaurs in the undergrowth of ancient forests. These early mammals, no larger than shrews, were developing their own revolutionary innovations in physiology and behavior, but they would remain in dinosaurs' shadow for the next 160 million years, waiting for their own time to inherit the Earth. In the golden light of a Jurassic afternoon, 150 million years ago, the ground trembles gently with footsteps that seem to come from the Earth itself. Through a forest of towering conifers and tree ferns, a creature of impossible proportions moves with surprising grace. Brontosaurus, the thunder lizard, stretches her 80-foot length from her small head, held high among the treetops, to the tip of her massive tail that drags softly through the ferns behind her. At 15 tons, she is larger than 3 modern elephants combined, yet she moves through her world with the unhurried dignity of a living mountain, each step deliberate and peaceful, her very presence a testament to life's ability to explore the outermost boundaries of what is possible on land. The world of the sauropods, those gentle giants with long necks and massive bodies, represents perhaps the most serene and stable period in terrestrial life's long history. For over 100 million years, these magnificent creatures dominated the landscape, creating ecosystems built around their enormous size and seemingly limitless capacity for peaceful coexistence. As you settle deeper into rest, let your mind wander through their world, a place where size brought not aggression but tranquility, where the largest animals were also the gentlest. The key to understanding these giants lies not in their enormous size, but in their remarkable efficiency. A single brontosaurus could consume over 400 pounds of vegetation daily, but she didn't need to hunt or compete aggressively for food. Instead, she simply reached higher than any other herbivore, using her 20-foot neck to access food sources that were completely unavailable to smaller animals. This vertical feeding strategy meant that multiple species of sauropods could coexist in the same habitat, each specializing in vegetation at different heights, like living skyscrapers sharing the same city block. Diplodocus, even longer than Brontosaurus at nearly 90 feet from nose to tail, had evolved a very different feeding strategy. Her neck was lighter and more flexible, allowing her to sweep it from side to side like a massive boom crane, gathering ground-level vegetation across enormous areas without needing to move her body. She could stand in one spot and feed from a circle with a radius of 25 feet, processing tons of low-growing plants while expending minimal energy on locomotion. Her whip-like tail, longer than any other dinosaur's, may have been used for communication, cracking like thunder to signal across the vast distances of her territory. The secret to the sauropods' success lay in their revolutionary approach to digestion. Unlike mammals, which chew their food thoroughly before swallowing, sauropods were bulk processors who swallowed vegetation whole and relied on enormous digestive systems to extract nutrients. Their stomachs contained gastrolith stones that they deliberately swallowed to help grind up plant material, essentially carrying mills inside their bodies. Their intestines were proportionally enormous, providing the surface area and processing time needed to extract nutrition from relatively poor quality plant food. This digestive strategy allowed sauropods to exploit food sources that were unavailable to other animals. The tough, resinous conifers and cycads that dominated Mesozoic landscapes were difficult to digest and relatively low in nutrition, but sauropods could consume them in such vast quantities that they could thrive on plants that other herbivores couldn't even eat. It was like having access to an unlimited food source that no one else wanted. The social behavior of sauropods appears to have been as gentle as their feeding habits. Fossil trackways show evidence of herds traveling together, with adults positioned protectively around juveniles. Some sites preserve hundreds of footprints from multiple species, suggesting that different types of sauropods may have migrated together in mixed herds. Like the great migrations of African wildlife today, but on a scale that dwarfs anything in the modern world. Camarasaurus, smaller than her giant cousins at only 50 feet in length, shows evidence of sophisticated parental care. Fossil nests reveal that females laid eggs in carefully constructed nests and may have remained nearby to protect the hatchlings during their most vulnerable period. Baby sauropods grew incredibly quickly. A Camarasaurus hatchling might grow from 6 pounds to several tons in just a few years. But this rapid growth required protection and possibly even feeding assistance from adults. The world these giants inhabited was a paradise of warmth and abundance. Global temperatures were higher than today, with no polar ice caps and tropical conditions extending almost to the poles. Sea levels were high, creating vast shallow seas that moderated climate and increased humidity. The atmosphere contained higher levels of carbon dioxide, which promoted lush plant growth and may have helped support the enormous oxygen requirements of such large animals in this greenhouse world. Forests stretched across vast areas that are now deserts or grasslands. The Morrison Formation of the western United States preserves one of these ancient ecosystems, showing us a landscape of meandering rivers, extensive floodplains, and forests dominated by conifers, tree ferns, and cycads. In these forests, herds of sauropods moved like living clouds, their presence shaping the very structure of the ecosystem around them. The giants weren't alone in their world. Smaller dinosaurs like Stegosaurus wandered the same forests, their distinctive plates and spikes serving more for display and temperature regulation than for defense against the peaceful sauropods. Predators like Allosaurus existed in the same ecosystems, but they were relatively small compared to the giants, and likely focused on smaller prey or scavenged the occasional sauropod that died of natural causes. The most remarkable thing about sauropod ecosystems is their stability. Unlike the boom and bust cycles that characterize many modern ecosystems, sauropod communities persisted with relatively little change for tens of millions of years. The basic pattern of giant herbivores creating and maintaining open woodland habitats remained consistent from the late Jurassic through the mid-Cretaceous, a span of time longer than mammals have dominated the Earth. This stability was possible because of the sauropods' gentle impact on their environment. Despite their enormous size, they were actually quite efficient in their use of resources. Their high-browsing strategy meant they rarely depleted ground-level vegetation, allowing forest understories to remain intact. Their huge size made them nearly invulnerable to predation as adults, reducing the evolutionary pressure for defensive adaptations that might have led to ecosystem disruption. The legacy of the sauropods extends far beyond their own extinction. Their long necks and efficient digestive systems established feeding strategies that would be adopted by other herbivorous dinosaurs. Their social behaviors provided models for cooperative living that can be seen in many later dinosaur species. Most importantly, they demonstrated that gigantism could be achieved through gentleness rather than aggression, cooperation rather than competition. The late Cretaceous period, 70 million years ago, was a time of extraordinary beauty and diversity. In Earth's history, flowering plants had transformed the landscape into something recognizably modern, with colorful blooms attracting the first butterflies and bees through forests that glowed with seasonal changes. Triceratops wandered through these flower-filled meadows in great herds, their massive frilled heads crowned with 3 distinctive horns, grazing peacefully on the new grasses and flowering shrubs that had recently evolved. Overhead, pteranodons soared on wings that spanned 20 feet, riding thermal currents with a grace that wouldn't be seen again until the evolution of birds. This was dinosaurian civilization at its peak, complex, sophisticated, and seemingly eternal. Yet beneath this serene surface, forces were building that would bring this magnificent era to a gentle close. The dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous had achieved a level of diversity and specialization that was unparalleled in terrestrial life's history. Parasaurolophus had evolved elaborate hollow crests that functioned as musical instruments, allowing herds to communicate across vast distances, with haunting, trumpet-like calls that echoed through the forests. Therizinosaurus, despite being related to fierce predators like Tyrannosaurus, had become a gentle giant herbivore with claws longer than baseball bats, using them not for hunting, but for pulling down high branches and stripping leaves from trees. Flowering plants that had revolutionized terrestrial ecosystems created new opportunities for specialization. Some dinosaurs developed sophisticated relationships with specific plant species, becoming pollinators or seed dispersers in ways that paralleled the relationships between mammals and plants today. The hadrosaurs, or duck-billed dinosaurs, had evolved hundreds of different species, each with distinctive crest shapes and feeding adaptations that allowed them to exploit specific ecological niches in the flower-dominated landscapes. The end came not with violence, but with a cosmic accident that no amount of adaptation could have prevented. 66 million years ago, a mountain-sized asteroid, probably about 6 miles in diameter, struck the Earth at what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear bombs, but the destruction was not immediate or dramatic in the way we might imagine. Instead, it began a cascade of environmental changes that unfolded over months and years, creating challenges that the highly specialized dinosaur ecosystems could not adapt to quickly enough. Initial impact sent debris high into the atmosphere, creating a global dust cloud that gradually blocked sunlight around the world. Plants dependent on photosynthesis began to die as the world grew dim and cold. The carefully balanced food webs that had supported dinosaurian diversity for 165 million years began to unravel, not through catastrophic violence, but through the quiet failure of the foundation species upon which everything else depended. The great herbivores were the first to feel the effects. Triceratops herds found their familiar feeding grounds barren, the flowering plants they depended on withering. In the perpetual twilight, some may have survived for months or even years on stored body fat and whatever vegetation they could find. But gradually, inevitably, the giants began to disappear from landscapes that had known their presence for geological ages. The predators followed their prey into extinction, but not immediately. Tyrannosaurus rex, the king of dinosaurs, may have initially benefited from the abundance of carrion as herbivorous dinosaurs died. But as the ecosystem simplified and prey became scarce, even these magnificent predators could not sustain their populations. The last tyrannosaurs may have lived for decades after the impact, lone survivors in a world that no longer had room for 40-foot-long predators. The extinction was selective in ways that seem almost poetic. The largest dinosaurs, those that had achieved the greatest size and specialization, were the first to disappear. But smaller, more adaptable species survived longer. Some small theropod dinosaurs, the ancestors of modern birds, found ways to exploit the changed world. They could fly to new food sources, had higher metabolisms that allowed them to remain active in cooler temperatures, and were small enough to survive on the insects and small animals that persisted even as larger ecosystems collapsed. In the oceans, the story was similar. The great marine reptiles, plesiosaurs and mosasaurs, that had ruled the seas for millions of years, gradually disappeared as the marine food webs that supported them unraveled. But smaller creatures survived, and from their ranks would come the ancestors of whales, seals, and all the other marine mammals that would eventually refill the ecological roles left vacant by the extinct marine reptiles. The end of the dinosaur era was also the beginning of something new. In the devastated landscapes left behind by the extinction, small mammals that had lived in the shadows of the giants for 160 million years suddenly found opportunities to explore and diversify. These tiny survivors, no larger than rats, carried within their genes the potential to become elephants, whales, bats, and eventually conscious beings capable of understanding their own place in the cosmic story we've been exploring together. Transition from the Mesozoic to the Cenozoic era represents one of life's most profound transformations, but it happened with a gentleness that matched the patient pace of evolution itself. Recovery from the extinction took millions of years. but it was marked by creativity and innovation rather than mere replacement. The new world that emerged from the ashes of the dinosaur age would be dominated by warm-blooded mammals and birds, creatures that had learned the secret of maintaining high activity levels, regardless of environmental temperature. Plants, too, underwent a remarkable recovery and diversification. The flowering plants that had begun to transform terrestrial ecosystems during the Cretaceous now exploded into new forms, creating the first grasslands, deciduous forests, and tropical rainforests. These new plant communities, more productive and diverse than anything that had existed during the dinosaur age, provided the foundation for mammalian success and the complex food webs that would characterize the modern world. Perhaps most remarkably, the extinction that ended the age of dinosaurs preserved their legacy in unexpected ways. The birds that survived were dinosaurs, carrying forward the innovations in metabolism, behavior, and intelligence that had characterized the most advanced theropods. In a very real sense, the age of dinosaurs never ended, simply transformed, becoming the age of feathered dinosaurs that still fly through our skies today. The story of this great transition reminds us that even the most dramatic changes in life's history unfold with patience and persistence rather than sudden catastrophe. The dinosaurs didn't disappear overnight, but gradually gave way to new forms of life, their evolutionary innovations preserved and transformed rather than lost. In the quiet persistence of life, through even the most challenging circumstances, we see reflected the same gentle strength that carries us through our own transitions and transformations. In the soft darkness beneath a fallen log, 65 million years ago, a small, furry creature stirs from her daytime rest. No larger than a modern shrew, she emerges into the twilight world of the early Paleocene epoch, her whiskers twitching as they sample the cool air for information about food, predators, and the subtle chemical messages left by others of her kind. This is Purgatorius, one of our earliest known ancestors, and as she begins her nightly foraging through the leaf litter of a recovering forest, she carries within her small body the revolutionary innovations that would allow mammals to inherit the earth from the dinosaurs, who had ruled it for so long. What made mammals different from their reptilian predecessors was not just their fur or their ability to produce milk for their young, though these were important innovations. The real revolution was metabolic, the ability to generate and maintain their own body heat, regardless of environmental conditions. While reptiles had to wait for the sun to warm them before they could become fully active, mammals could remain alert, active, and capable of complex behaviors throughout the day and night, in all seasons and across a much wider range of climates than had been possible for earlier terrestrial vertebrates. This metabolic revolution came at a cost. Mammals had to consume far more food than reptiles of comparable size to fuel their internal furnaces. But it also brought extraordinary advantages. Mammals could colonize environments that were too cold for reptiles, remain active during winter months, and most importantly, support the energy-intensive development of large, complex brains that would eventually give rise to intelligence, consciousness, and the capacity for contemplating existence itself. The early mammals were nocturnal creatures, active during the hours when the dinosaurs that shared their world were least active. In the darkness, they developed extraordinary sensory capabilities that would become hallmarks of mammalian life. Their hearing became incredibly acute, able to detect the slightest sounds of approaching predators or scurrying prey. Their sense of smell developed far beyond anything seen in reptiles, allowing them to navigate their world through chemical information invisible to other animals. Most remarkably, early mammals developed the capacity for complex parental care that went far beyond anything seen in reptiles or birds. Mammalian mothers could provide their offspring with perfectly nutritious milk, produced by their own bodies and tailored to their young's specific developmental needs. This innovation meant that mammalian babies could be born in a relatively undeveloped state and complete much of their growth and development while being nourished and protected by their mothers. The bond between mammalian mothers and their offspring became one of the strongest and most enduring relationships in the animal kingdom, creating opportunities for learning and behavioral complexity that had been impossible in egg-laying species. Young mammals could learn from their mothers, not just through genetic programming, but through direct observation and teaching, laying the foundation for the cultural transmission of knowledge that would eventually become one of humanity's defining characteristics. As the Paleocene epoch progressed and the world recovered from the extinction that had ended the dinosaur age, mammals began to diversify with remarkable speed. No longer constrained to small nocturnal niches, they began exploring the ecological opportunities left vacant by the extinct dinosaurs. Some remained small and specialized, developing into the ancestors of modern shrews, mice, and other tiny mammals. Others began experimenting with larger body sizes and new feeding strategies. Phenacodus, a wolf-sized mammal from the late Paleocene, represents one of these early experiments in mammalian gigantism. Unlike the specialized teeth of modern mammals, Phenacodus had relatively generalized dental equipment, suggesting it was an omnivore capable of eating both plant and animal food. Its limbs show adaptations for both running and climbing, indicating a lifestyle that took advantage of multiple habitat types: forests, grasslands, and possibly even wetland areas. The evolution of specialized teeth became one of the defining characteristics of mammalian success. Unlike reptiles, which typically have relatively uniform teeth designed primarily for grasping prey, mammals evolved dental systems that could process food in increasingly sophisticated ways. Incisors for cutting, canines for grasping, premolars and molars for grinding, this dental toolkit allowed mammals to extract maximum nutrition from their food and exploit food sources that were inaccessible to other animals. Perhaps most importantly, the mammalian brain was evolving capabilities that went far beyond simple survival needs. The neocortex, the outer layer of the mammalian brain responsible for complex thinking and processing, began to expand and develop new organizational patterns. Early mammals were developing the capacity for learning, memory, problem-solving, and vong. Eventually, the ability to understand and manipulate their environment in ways that transcended simple instinctual responses. By the Eocene epoch, 50 million years ago, mammals had diversified into forms that would be recognizable to modern eyes. Early horses, no larger than house cats, grazed in prehistoric grasslands on multiple toes rather than hooves. Primitive whales, still possessing hind limbs, were learning to exploit aquatic environments while retaining their mammalian metabolism and intelligence. Early primates were developing the forward-facing eyes and grasping hands that would eventually become essential for manipulating tools and understanding spatial relationships. The world these early mammals inhabited was warmer and more tropical than today's Earth, with lush forests extending almost to the poles and no permanent ice anywhere on the planet. This greenhouse world provided ideal conditions for mammalian diversification, with abundant food resources and stable climates that allowed for long-term evolutionary experimentation. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of early mammalian evolution was the development of social behaviors that went far beyond anything seen in reptilian ancestors. Many mammals began living in family groups, developing complex systems of communication, cooperation, and mutual care. These social innovations would prove crucial for the eventual evolution of human society and culture. The success of warm-blooded life represents one of evolution's most successful energy investments. By developing the ability to maintain constant body temperature and high activity levels, mammals gained access to ecological opportunities that had been impossible for cold-blooded animals. They could remain alert and active in cold climates during winter months and throughout the day-night cycle. This metabolic freedom allowed for the development of complex behaviors, sophisticated social systems, and eventually, the conscious intelligence that makes it possible for you to lie here tonight, warm and comfortable, contemplating the ancient history that led to your existence. As we drift toward the final chapter of our journey, let yourself rest in the warmth of your mammalian heritage, feeling the steady rhythm of your heartbeat connecting you to 65 million years of warm-blooded ancestors. In the golden light of an African sunrise. 3 million years ago, a small figure sits quietly on a rocky outcrop, her hands cradling something precious, a smooth river stone that she has been shaping with careful, deliberate strikes. Lucy, as scientists would later name her, represents a pivotal moment in the history of consciousness on Earth. As she works, her brain larger than any ape's, yet still small compared to what would come, is engaged in something truly revolutionary. She is not just reacting to her environment or following instinctual patterns, but planning, imagining, creating something that does not yet exist. In this simple act of tool-making, consciousness is taking its first tentative steps toward understanding itself and its place in the vast cosmic story. We have traveled together tonight. The evolution of consciousness was not a sudden event, but rather the culmination of hundreds of millions of years of gradual developments in nervous system complexity. From the first simple nerve nets of ancient jellyfish to the sophisticated brains of early mammals, evolution had been steadily building. The neural architecture that would eventually support self-awareness, abstract thought, and the capacity to contemplate existence itself. The human brain represents the current pinnacle of this ancient progression, containing more connections than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy, each thought emerging from patterns of electrical activity more complex than any storm system. On Earth. What makes human consciousness so remarkable is not just its complexity, but its capacity for transcendence, the ability to step outside immediate sensory experience and contemplate abstract concepts like time, infinity, and meaning. As you lie here tonight, your brain is effortlessly performing calculations that would challenge the most sophisticated computers, integrating sensory information, accessing memories, processing language, and maintaining the continuous sense of self that makes you uniquely you. The development of language marked another crucial threshold in consciousness evolution. Early humans discovered that they could use arbitrary sounds to represent objects, actions, and ideas, allowing them to share not just information, but entire mental models of reality. With language came the ability to preserve and transmit knowledge across generations, creating the foundation for culture, science, art, and all the achievements that characterize human civilization. But consciousness brought with it something else, the capacity for wonder, for asking questions that go beyond survival needs. Early humans looked up at the night sky and asked not just practical questions about seasons and navigation, but profound questions about existence, purpose, and their place in the cosmos. They created art not because it helped them survive, but because consciousness itself seems to seek beauty, meaning, and creative expression. The story we've explored together tonight, from the first bacteria-breathing poison in ancient seas to the emergence of conscious beings capable of understanding their own history, is ultimately a story about the universe awakening to itself. Through consciousness, the cosmos has developed the ability to contemplate its own existence, to appreciate its own beauty, and to search for meaning in its own unfolding story. Every element in your body was forged in the nuclear furnaces of awe, ancient stars that lived and died billions of years before Earth existed. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe, all of it was created in stellar cores and scattered across space by supernovas, eventually condensing into the planets and life forms that would become your ancestors. You are quite literally made of star stuff, and through your consciousness, Those ancient stellar elements are now able to contemplate their own cosmic journey. The bacteria that first learned to breathe, oxygen 2.4 billion years ago, are still. With you, their descendants live in every cell of your body as mitochondria, still performing the same essential function of converting oxygen into energy that allowed complex life to emerge from ancient seas. The innovations of every era we've explored tonight are preserved in your body and your mind. From the basic cellular machinery inherited from the earliest life forms to the sophisticated nervous system that allows you to experience this very moment of peaceful reflection. As you drift towards sleep tonight, you carry with you the accumulated wisdom of 4 billion years of evolution. Your brain automatically regulates your breathing using reflexes inherited from the first air-breathing fish. Your heart beats with rhythms perfected over hundreds of millions of years of vertebrate evolution. Your dreams may revisit the landscapes we've explored together, processing the day's experiences using neural pathways that were first established in early mammals, huddling together for warmth in the shadow of the dinosaurs. The emergence of consciousness represents not the end of evolution, but perhaps its most profound beginning. Through science, art, love, and contemplation, conscious beings are discovering new ways to understand and appreciate the cosmos that gave rise to them. Every act of creativity, every moment of compassion, every instance of wonder at the beauty of existence extends the universe's capacity for self-awareness and self-appreciation. Tonight, as you rest in the comfort of your bed, you are participating in one of the most remarkable phenomena in the known universe, a complex arrangement of matter that has become aware of itself, capable of love, wonder, and peaceful contemplation. The same forces that created the first stars, sparked the first life, and drove the long journey from simple cells to conscious beings are still at work, still creating, still exploring new possibilities for existence. The questions that drove our ancient ancestors to look up at the stars with wonder are still with us today. What is consciousness? Why does the universe exist? What is our purpose in this vast cosmic story? These questions may never have final answers, but the capacity to ask them, to wonder about them, and to share that wonder with others represents one of the most beautiful achievements in the 13.8 billion year history of the cosmos. As sleep approaches, feel yourself settling back into the rhythm of deep time, your breathing slowing to match the patient pace of geological ages, your heartbeat echoing the steady pulse of cosmic evolution. You are resting now, not just as an individual, but as the temporary focal point of billions of years of stellar evolution, planetary formation, and biological development. Through your peaceful sleep, the universe itself finds rest, and in your dreams, the ancient story continues, weaving new patterns of possibility in the endless dance of existence. The journey from ancient seas to conscious awareness is complete, but it is also just beginning. Each time you wake, you represent a new moment in the universe's ongoing exploration of what is possible, what is beautiful, and what is meaningful in the vast, gentle mystery of existence. Sleep well, fellow traveler in the cosmic story. Dream of ancient seas and gentle giants, of stars being born and life finding its way. You are home now, resting peacefully in the embrace of deep time, part of the most beautiful story ever told.